they couldn't hear me, and
Yeah,
so
get
I
it.
was super. I was super subconscious about making sure they couldn't hear us during the countdown.
What about now? Okay, you can hear me.
Okay,
Sick,
okay,
sick. Type.
all right.
Okay, we're
One of these days, we'll be professionals. We'll have it all down. And it's interesting. We're gonna, I guess, shift gears a minute. We'll talk about the provisional later because this is relevant now. One of the things about content creation that I truly believe is it's worth it to do it just to do it. You're right. You're gonna make mistakes. Nothing's going to be perfect, and I think that there's a lot of people who perceive all these weaknesses in their content that th're gonna have, or all these things that they don't know. Um, and I think that like you're gonna learn so much more just by getting in there and doing it.
absolutely, dude. Like, I go back to watching, like, well, I've actually never once gone back and watched any of my videos, but I like have seen, like, I think about the original videos I made where I was just like me in a Discord call recording via like a screen share program with like Dave Wagner, and like for 2 hours I was just talking to a guy about his like, some cool run he had or something like that, and like just how low tech it was and all the little things I picked up along the way. And I'm still just like super low tech, but I try my best to like try to pick up like one or two things a week, just try to like learn something every single time, because I'm not a professional Twitch streamer, like we've got such a small market share of an already very small market. We're just having fun, learning something new, and just like having a hobby, and having fun expressing our opinions about the hobby. And like, it's cool to have even like two people show up and be like, hey bro, I like your opinion about this, about your hobby. Like it's fun, and challenging yourself to like do these things is like 100% what it's really about. Like, of course, like we love to be like have the affirmation, like, like the stream I had a couple like a month or two ago where we had like the 60-70 people watching while we had the previews up. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And but like, every stream that I have 8 people, I'm still just as happy to be like chilling with the boys and having fun making the content. Like the investment of the green screen, right, was like a big deal to me. I was like, oh, now I'm a professional guy, right? Even though it's like a shitty green screen, and you can clearly see it, like it's really terrible. It's all ruffled back here, and you can see parts of the wall, and yada yada.
I mean, you used to see my actual green screen because I kept ordering lights from Amazon, and I still only have the one light. You can still see all my lights from one side, and it's at an angle because for those who don't know, for green screening, you're supposed to have like a normal yellow skin tone light, and then you're supposed to have like your lighting between you and the green screen. And so I've always been jealous that there are people who just have good enough lighting that they can just roll it out, put it up. But I've been going back and forth with Amazon on equipment. And just like with the equipment, I love that you mentioned adding one new thing. One of the big goals I had when I first started doing the video editing stuff, when I was making the first like couple, like basically the second, the third and stuff, was I told myself I need to add something new. I need to add at least one new skill, like one new technique, so that way, at the very least, I know that I'm getting something from making the content, right? Like, even if nobody likes the content, even if nobody watches it, that way I myself am getting better as a creator, as, a talent or a skill that I'm working on.
Yeah. When you put that first video out, which was like a fighting game promo almost, it was quite long. And I remember you spent like probably 3 months of last year on it. And I was just so impressed because I had like the one video I put effort into editing was so shitty. It was like almost 2 hours long, and I had like graphics pop up. There was no transitioning at all, nothing going on. I was just like how would I like 8th grade level, like how do I get a picture on the screen kind of thing. And then I looked at Sam's video and I was like, holy smokes, he's got like pings going off, the music is on point, it's slamming. I remember being just like astounded at the level of like research you obviously did, because I was like so not invested. I just wanted to do this stupid video about Mandalorians, right? And like for my friends.
It's
And every time you put out a video, I'm like that Tamron Cardwell one with the intro to My Hero, they had to go back and forth with getting it a copyright strike was like the pinnacle to me. That's just like
yeah.
wow.
Of all the ones to get the copyright strike, that's like the shortest one.
Yeah. Like when I saw Jose and me just like flying by for 0.3 seconds, I was the happiest man alive. It's like wow, oh, I got to be part of history. In this killer video.
Did you catch the Bring Your Friends edit? That's the only one I was really wondering about because it's a legacy champ card.
Yeah. I for sure recognize everything in the video. I saw the Broberg, I saw the Chris Nixon, I saw it was all there. I loved 100% of it. There was for sure stuff that was just for like the old hat UFS guys and stuff for the new people as well.
I'm not gonna talk about how long it took me to do that one or how long it took me specifically to crop out the flying drone from the Chris Nixon Surpass Your Limits champ art. But I will say it's interesting to me that one was like such a big hit because the perceived amount of effort, I guess, that I think people kind of, that went into it is interesting because with that one, the thing that I was the luckiest about was to discover that I can copy like some of the keyframes from the different cards onto different edits. Like, you spend your time editing this one part, like one piece of the video on screen for like hours, like figuring out, getting it perfect, getting everything right. And I probably did that like 2 or 3 times before actually doing research, like discussing it with someone and finding out that I can shortcut a little bit of it. Now, I did also find out that all the cards aren't either exactly perfect or like all the pictures from the same databases aren't exactly the same, which was kind of weird, but it still cut a lot of the time down to get that video out.
Yeah, I mean, like I assume that first video you put out took the most amount of time because that's just like that's the getting on the ground floor in terms of learning, right? And you get the skills like to that, and it's like with any other hobby, right? Like the first time going through anything is gonna be the most arduous, And then as you get the shorthand, you get the muscle memory, it becomes a little bit easier and easier every single. Then you get better and better as well. So
there's definitely a point where it seemed insurmountable, and I was like, oh, this is like learning GIMP. Like I've never actually fully learned GIMP all the way because GIMP and Photoshop both for me, I get in there and like I already clearly have a goal. I have a goal that I want to get to, and figuring out like their versions and their terminologies for everything, like that can be super difficult. Like just Googling, like if you don't know the word crop exists, if you've never seen crop, and you start Googling cutout or you use the cut tool and it's not doing what you want, right? Like I think a lot of us as millennials or as Zoomers can kind of take for granted that we saw the word crop when we were 10. And the first time I was like, this doesn't say cut out. This doesn't cut things out. Like I don't need farm food. I don't need crops.
Yeah. I definitely like anytime I go into Photoshop because that's like where like most of my actual like my passion for the actual creation element is. Like when it comes to like the like I love making my shitty thumbnails. Okay, like that's my true passion in terms of the creation. I'm a musician by trade, so like I don't know anything about this computer science stuff, even though that was my minor. But like so in Photoshop, I have to relearn skills probably 3 times a week. Like I'll be in my Google search, you'll probably see how to blur in Photoshop like 40 times over the past year, or like warp, explaining the warp setting and things like that. Like it's amazing how quickly you forget things and not knowing what you don't know is so choice, right? Because you watch somebody else work, you're like oh my god, I watched Tim Friedlieb work on something like it was like Post. Set. Just the Post, right?
Okay.
And for like My Hero, right? And just watching him do shorthand stuff because he's like a fucking professional, I was like, damn, like you gotta teach me these short keys, these things. It's like watching Bo Tucker do accounting, where I'm like inputting things piece by piece, whatever in my like my in my own like accounting
You're
software,
like
and he.
finger typing compared to their
Oh yeah, and
texting.
he's just like, 800 words per minute. He set up my P and L in about 5 minutes flat. Would have taken me an actual week to make. Like
Yeah.
it's astounding to watch somebody really like truly work on the craft because I'm as amateur as it comes.
Yeah, and I think before we get too far away from it, Elysian in the chat mentioned, if you focus on the numbers and you think of it as people, right, it changes very differently. I love the example of 5 people like in a room, compared to like 25 people is a whole classroom of people. And if you think about it, like streaming to 8, 10 people, I think our first live stream, before the TAM raid, which I was super grateful for. I think we got up to like 10 or 12 at most at one time. And that doesn't seem very cool or very impressive, even compared to like the provisional numbers over the weekend. But if you think about like standing in front of a group of 12 people, like if you were at your locals, and you were like, okay, now stand in front of your whole local tournament and talk about the game for an hour, that would kill some people. Like the nervousness, like just having to look at them like face to face,
100%.
making eye contact with 12 different people for that long, and public speaking can be super difficult. So I think it's really cool that our community is so involved and so tight knit. And when I started, as I'm sure would like you mentioned before, a big part of it was I just wanted to have another way to interact with my community. I wanted to have like media to talk over, because we would always reference like videos, and we would post videos from Magic the Gathering or from Yu-Gi-Oh, and like we could translate that into our community as a discussion, but we didn't really have anything that was our own.
It's like back in the day, we just had Chris Smith and Rob, right? Like that was like the Guile treatment. That was
Scott
it.
Summon had like 1 or 2 edits. Like whenever a major event, like it would be a major event would happen, and then one person would make like a blog post. One person would do like a tournament report, or a couple people. We'd have like one podcast, and then we'd have like the Omaha guys. We had like a TCG University, like
Right.
Cam's Origins, right? So like, and it was all just like based around when events would happen.
Yeah, I that was like a big thing for me. Like once the pandemic hit, I was like, because before that I had put up some like local stuff because I thought that my like Florida group was super killer, but nobody was ever talking about them at events. Like I thought my local guys, Goose, Cody, Tag, David, Bryant, Jose, who
Florida
was like,
boys.
yeah, like Florida guys. I think that they're really, really talented, but like they're kind of quiet. They keep to their own. Like I'm the loud guy. Which is why everybody knows me and maybe not a lot of those guys. But they're all really, really, really talented players. And I wouldn't be as good as I am if I didn't play in that play group. So like I was just like, let me put up some footage, like in the Shameless Discord, because I loved trolling around in the Shameless Discord at that time. And then the pandemic hit and like the game kind of died, and I say kind of
Well,
in very light, quotations.
I want to talk about that just for a second, only because it's super interesting for me, the timeline that I went through. It was a blessing in disguise for me personally. For a lot of people who had locals and who had like these communities that were just starting to thrive, I can definitely see where they're coming from. But I actually thought like the COVID evolution, though it was maybe a little slower than other card games, having the online internet community was like introducing me to a whole world of UFS that before didn't really exist to me.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's so strange because like all we had to like make the game less stagnant was like a few DLCs and then playing in a new format via the retro format, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, it really felt like a revitalization in terms of like what we did as a community because everybody got like a lot closer. Because we played a lot of the same people a lot of the time. There were like 50, 60 people playing, but those 50, 60 people were all playing at every single event.
Yeah.
So it became a lot tighter for sure. And like for me, after TCGU blew up, and the Guile treatment was no longer online, and like even Panis was like doing like other card games, so like Runeterra stuff, right? I
Yeah.
was like, well, like I'll do some of these things because like I just wanted to record like I was being very selfish. I just wanted to hear Ben Shoemaker talk about his character cards, and I wanted to hear I wanted to hear what it was a lot of things like Ashley, talk about her tournament run, being a woman in like a card gaming world. Like that's something that I'm curious about, right? And like I didn't really care if anybody else cared. I was just like, I'm gonna put it out there because this gives me the opportunity to talk to these people that I like about something that, I know they wouldn't like want to talk for 2 hours about this normally, but if I frame it as an interview, they'll do it,
Yeah.
and so like, and then I had one with Phil, and like Phil and I were pretty close. We got tighter over the beginning of the pandemic, and after that it was like, that was sick, we should do that and just never have any guests on. And so the podcast kind of like I said, it like took off. We were having fun with it. We just kept putting it out, and I had fun with the thumbnails, and that's just how it sort of happened.
And that's the best point, right? Like in NJ Brock has mentioned we've had the attempts to make the content. We've had people who are willing to, and we've had people who are capable, qualified, whatever. Which, by the way, a big thing for me is anybody's qualified to make content. If you are a new beginner and you're definitely not good at the game, you can just be honest about that and talk about things that you like to talk about. Like, it's really not that complicated. People who make content for games aren't always the best. Like, that's just that's almost like a byproduct of like the esports online culture. So if you want to make content, if you want to just record anything, we've had like this weird boom almost because the community is so tight knit. It's so easy to find out about people who are making just any content that they want to, like Go Beyond Gaming, Alliteration Gaming, the Universes Academy guys. Like, there's all kinds of content creators out there, not just ones on Twitch, not just ones on YouTube. There's all kinds of people who just want to talk about the game, right? Like, they just want to have like an avenue to express their viewpoints, and it's so important for a game that is as free and diverse as ours. You can't reduce it down to just a few decks that matter. So having all these different views and opinions is super helpful. So if you guys want to make content out there, if you want to do anything out there, like Alliteration Gaming's in the chat. Hey, what's up? Talking about all those top cuts you're making, all the top cuts you've been in, and you're not good. Come on now.
Yo, Alliteration, we got to talk about sponsorship at some time. I love your content.
Yeah, so if you want to make content for the game, it doesn't even actually have to be gameplay. Like, spoiler alert, you can make content for this game about deck boxes, about sleeves, about skits. You could do anything. So it doesn't have to be interviews. It doesn't have to be deck profiles. Although I do plan to make deck profiles. One of the things I'm going to be doing is called the speculative deculative profile, where for the next couple weeks leading up to, or I guess the week, the next week, I'm going to be uploading daily as we get to set 2 with like set 2 character decks. So, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be anything you guys want. Bromley, do you know what the first video of yours I ever saw was?
No idea.
So going back to the timeline of the game, mm-hmm. and talking about different, I guess, metas and formats, I had personally taken a break. I was just in a bad place in my life. I was in a bad place financially, and I wasn't enjoying the game, and it wasn't necessarily the game's fault, so I decided to take a break. But when I came back to the game, it was in 2019, and I had come back just in time to play in a PTC in California. I played Reptile. It was a massive mistake. There were very many memes. I felt like Discard. I felt Discard was much stronger than it is. But one of the things that really it was a lot of different things. It surprised me. It humbled me. But it inspired me all the way back in 2019, and I don't know if you remember this. I'm gonna transition over here. Do you? I know you can't see it until it pops up on the stream. Do you remember this video?
Yeah, I love making that video.
Yeah, so I came through and I can't remember, it was like my earliest days in the Shameless Discord, I think it was. I'm going to turn this down. Chat, tell me if this is loud or not. We're not going to watch the whole video. It's like 40 minutes long. But I just wanted to give everyone in the chat like sort of an impression of like where you can start and where you can end up, because this is all it takes to make content in the game. You just have your friends, you have something that you want to talk about, something that you're passionate about, you have a delicious mustache, and you can make content for our game.
Oh man, I was so chunky, and also the mustache combo was in effect at that point. Oh man, that was such a fun one to make. You go, man. Go on, sorry.
I was gonna say I wanted to highlight this one only because the thing I'm most self-conscious about is my production quality. You probably hear me complain about my audio quality all the time. I bitch about my lighting. I never planned to do live streams. I'd never planned to be on camera. It's just not I wanted to make the content that I wanted to see. And, you know, part of that is like the big thing was the meme videos. Like I love meme videos from fighting games. I love like the funny flair and like pointing out all the funniest interactions for card games. Card game content on YouTube is not primarily competitive based. You know, right. Other card games live and die by their casuals. They really do. You know, it's the thing people complain about the most is the competitive formats, because in a casual format you can just agree not to play heinous stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I really thought that this was, when I first saw it, you know, I'm not going to lie, there was kind of like who's this guy and why, you know, who is he to talk about it, right? Because I don't think I had met you yet. This was months leading up to the worlds where I borrowed Taguro Brothers from you out of nowhere. And so it's just super interesting to me that like this was definitely at the time not something that would lead a spark or like be considered an inspiration, I'm sure. But looking back on it, this was definitely a moment that, you know, stuck out to me where I was like, wow, there's actually people that I've never heard of, that I've never met, who not only like understand more complicated elements of the game, but are willing to talk about them, that want to see them.
It's like, to me, going through the Shameless Discord, which is like the main source for, there's like the Facebook Universes NA and Shameless Discord were like the primary places where you'd see people talking about things. And like I would see things like a day or two late, or like I would hear things that I didn't agree with, but like I didn't feel like I could really enunciate what I wanted to say, or like I hear people locally talking about things, and this was like the first one that I was like, I want to make something about it, and because I heard local players, like new players, like they saw a loop and they said, "Oh, that's so toxic. I don't want to deal with that." And like those are the sparks, right? Those are, like you were talking about. Those are the sparks. For like we want to talk about the thing, you know. And my biggest takeaway from it, like, that nobody should watch that video because it's completely irrelevant to my hero. But like there was a Takeda loop that just existed for like 3 years and nobody ever played it, right? Not a single person knew. Like everybody knew it existed. Nobody ever played it. And it's just, my whole thing was just like, loops inherently are not toxic. It's all about ease of use and ease of interaction, right? And that was the whole video, basically. It's just like, hey, you already played things to mess with this, right? And then, of course, 3 months later, Mark Tyner sweeps worlds with a looping deck. But
a pseudo infinite, right? Like a practical infinite.
Exactly, yeah. And that was the big thing, is that there's very few true infinites in this card game, right? Like the true infinites are things that are like infinite speed and damage, but even then, a lot of times, like they're still finite. And it's like how infinite does the thing need to be? You just need to do 40 damage, right? Like It's so like that was the fun thing, and seeing that like sometimes you can see it here, like people play meteor showers and stuff like that, and they play Denki, and you're like, oh, look at all this damage I can do. And it's like, how efficient is that versus just like playing a super big powerful attack, or just playing like 3 frog lashings in a row. Like it's less flashy for sure, right? But that's like, and like speaking of like segueing for a second, flashy is part of the fun of it sometimes too. And we're like literally this weekend we're gonna have a dunk contest all about making the flashiest combo we could possibly make, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's super important, I think, to remember that along the way, it's really easy to look at results. It's really easy to just be focused on where everything ended up. And as we saw all throughout the weekend at the Provisional, as we've seen all throughout the My Hero format, there's so many decisions leading up to that final conclusion. There's so many different interaction points, and as long as the level of interaction is maintained with the game, I think that infinites are definitely fine. I think the biggest issue comes from the fact that, like in another game, you're almost designed not to interact. Like it's very picky and choosy. They're very picky and choosy in Magic and in Pokemon, like not only when you can interact, but what types of decks can interact. And in Yu-Gi-Oh, It's very clear that like one deck interacts better. One deck has just a better negation effect, a easier costed negation, whatever it is. And so in our game, like every deck is meant to interact at least in some way. Like if you have an infinite speed and damage, I can reset the damage if I'm on these symbols, and then I take 4 damage, who cares? If you have an infinite speed and damage, and I reset the speed because I'm an air symbol deck, or I have Bakery Poster Go, right? So like there's so many different avenues with which you're supposed to interact. I think the only time we really get upset is when we feel like it happens too quickly, when it's turn 2 and I didn't actually get to play the game.
It's like it's so fun to talk about these sorts of interactions, right? Because that's what they are. Right? That's what makes, that kind of sets our game apart. And you really nailed it on the head, right? The only time that these like, and it doesn't necessarily have to be infinite, right? It's when these things feel uninteractable is when they get banned. One of the really most, like the craziest thing about, like, because the only other card game I ever played was Pokemon, right? And in Pokemon, they banned decks outright if they were not something that like whatever the game company that makes it is, Game Freak, right? If Game Freak says they didn't think that this was going to be a meta deck, even if it's not broken, okay? Even if it's not broken, if it's just something they didn't anticipate, they're just going to ban it.
Mm-hmm. Like any emergent gameplay in Pokemon is punished.
Yeah, it's so crazy. What a wonderful colloquialism, emergent gameplay. In UFS and in My Hero, right? Like we're going to see with these new sets, there's going to be tons of emergent gameplay, right? We see it already in the first set, right? Just from tournament to tournament, there's different kinds of interactions that people favor that emerge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the real beauty of the game, is that you come out of left field with something totally like monstrous or different, and people aren't prepared for it. At least for me, like that's what I love to come up with. But when they're uninteractive, or they like remove the opponent from the equation, that's when they get a little too much, right? And at least in our game, right? In our game, because like Yu-Gi-Oh is the total opposite. It's like the whole purpose is to completely remove your opponent from the equation, right? It's just like, hey, no, I'm gonna do my thing. One of my favorite videos I've ever seen concerning Yu-Gi-Oh is like a guy doing like he was like, all right, I'm gonna do my deck simulator, and he rolls up to the camera and he just rolls the dice. He's like, all right, good game. And he just rolls the dice. Good game.
Milan the Duelist. I was just showing my buddy that, my old Yu-Gi-Oh buddy. He was basically a kitchen table player. I showed him, it's like how combo players practice before the event. And he rolls the dice and he's like, yes, I'm going first. Let's go, And then he rolls a dice and he goes, you got it, man. Like, it's so funny. And like, Yu-Gi-Oh players sign up and they're like okay with that, because I really, having not been, inundated with the Yu-Gi-Oh community very much, but having followed, social media with it and talking to Yu-Gi-Oh players and still trying to like stay involved and listen to like the frank discussions. Not only is it, of course, a game that survives more by its casual community than by the most busted, broken competitive stuff, but it survives on the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh has a layered deck building similar to our game. Like, if I was going to say the most similar thing to our game and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that the My Hero card game technically has, like, no limit to the resources. As long as you can make a control check, then you can play the card. And,
Right.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Has, like, a limit, like an actions per turn, kind of like a Flesh and Blood thing with your summon limit. But because you can build a deck around basically just card advantage, like just the card resources that you can get from your deck, it allows people to build these multi-layered decks. And so the deck building in Yu-Gi-Oh!, outside of the solved, pushed, like intended archetypes that they balance the game around, just like Magic does, just like Pokemon does. Like, when people say they want our game to get big, like a big 3 big, I get kind of scared, because one of the things about being a really big card game is that you have to maintain your competitive format, and the easiest way to do that is to just accept that some decks are designed to interact in very specific ways. But that's kind of a whole nother point. But so the deck building layers in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are very interesting to me, because we've seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! People are playing 60 card decks now. Yu-Gi-Oh!, the game that was famous for having the smallest deck size and banning any card that lets you go through your deck faster, that lets you have a quote-unquote smaller deck, has always been an issue. People have decided, I'm just going to cram all the good archetypes into the same deck, because we're at a point now where people have realized that versatility and redundancy are almost equally viable if the cards are strong enough. If the cards are designed to be like, these are the ones we want you to play, we'll just play all of them.
Right. I was actually going to mention that. I saw some video. I didn't watch the video, but I saw like a clickbait sort of thumbnail thing. That was like, why people are running 60 minutes or 60 card decks.
Yeah, that was the fastest click in my life. Like, as soon as I saw that on Yu-Gi-Oh!, I was like, I've been waiting for the creators to make this video.
Well, it's so nuts to me, because like people, that was like the reason why a lot of players came into like My Hero, and they'd like trash like established veterans decks. They'd be like, too many cards, you're just playing this many cards. And there was even a guy I remember recently, like January or maybe February, who put out a deck, and he was just like, if you're coming from Magic, you should only play 50 card decks in My Hero, yada yada yada. And I was like, I had a conversation with a guy. I was like, that's wrong, man. Like, it's not right. You you don't have to do hard. It's like, well, it's just for like the Magic. I was like, I get that, but it's like, it's not right. It's not correct. And to see it translated into a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like, I think it shows that like there's actually no real hard and fast rules, like there's so many different ways to approach it, even in a game like Yu-Gi-Oh!, which seems solved, which seems like it's so like toxic to the casual experience and to the, like the idea of having new ideas, and so it was heartening to look at just the thumbnail, right, from that 0.8 seconds that I looked at and went, oh, that's awesome, and then I moved on with my day, and you wouldn't watch the video, which is awesome. That's great that you saw it. All the
content creators have been talking about it, because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like the game where no one would ever expect it. In Magic the Gathering, they have pushed like specific, like more than Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is super interesting. I know I'm probably talking over a lot of people's heads, because we actually have a lot of people in our card game who just don't play other card games. They don't come from the bigger card games looking for a different experience,
like me.
Yeah, like you. And like one of my favorite new players, Nilmerg, like Nilmerg in your Discord is like one of the funniest people, and one of the, like, it was super refreshing to talk to them, because it's super cool to see someone come from like outside card games and just have like a completely empty perspective, but still pick up on things very quickly, like just without hesitation, really. Like they're very certain of certain things that took me years to be certain of in card games.
My two guests tonight on my podcast are Daniel Nelson, who won this last provisional, and well, I have a third. It's Chris Smith. Everyone loves Chris Smith, but and Nilmerg, and like watching them play and like playing against them, and the confidence that they have when they play is like. Like I remember being like a new player and wanted to I wanted to, and it's weird for me to transition into like to the older player, quote unquote, because I was the new guy for such a long time. I felt
you got like one more year. 5 years is when you become an old head.
Sure. It's just like I remember my first 2 years. I was just trying to get my name out. Like I wanted to be the guy who made like stupid decks and like won with them, you know. And like watching these like young hot shots come in and like have opinions and like completely detract like what other people are saying, or like playing against Nilmerg is one of like the greatest joys and simultaneously most frustrating experiences I have in my life, because she's so contrary to like the way that I like to play the game, where she's just like, I'm like, you should do X, Y, and Z, and she's like, all right, but what if I just spammed the A button?
What if I just kill you?
Yeah, and it's just like, well, it doesn't seem optimal, but it does count to potato, and if I check good, it works. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then she does it, and I die, and I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
you know, like it works. It work if it works, it works. It works.
I think
And so it's like it's fun because I love teaching. It's like, you know, that's what I did for 10 years of my life. I taught kids how to play the game. And these aren't kids, of course. You know, these are just a couple of Zoomers in their 20s, but
relative terms. We're relative to our gaming experience.
Yeah. Well, I just love it because like you know, because they're about the age of a lot of my students that I did teach, right? So they're like around the same age as the like, you know, because my old students still reach out to me and they're like, you know, Bromley this, or Bromley, you know, how you doing, or I got this thing, or like I'm playing with Olivia Rodrigo this, or I'm doing this with yada yada, and it's cool to like it, I get the same like warm and fuzzy vibes from when I was teaching, watching them do well, even though I'm not like I'm not at all responsible for Daniel Nelson. That kid is doing his shit on his own terms and his own speed and pace, and you know, I'm not trying to take any credit there, but
well, he taught me a lot. Like when we talked about Tokoyami, you know, granted, a lot of it was me admitting I don't have a bunch of experience. It was just like
Sure.
my conceptual bias going into it, and learning just like the kind of advantages you can get from a different play style was super interesting. And I do want to talk just for a minute. Like there was, you know, as the game changes and progresses, you know, I think people really do have like this anchor tying them down, because some things have been true for so long with like universes and with UFS and like all the old printed stuff for the same game system. You know, I've heard, and from other card games, like one of my biggest hangups is when I hear people say things that are like undeniably true about Magic the Gathering, and then applying it from a card game perspective, because Magic the Gathering players talk about game theory in like a broad sense, but they're still only applying it to their game, because they say things like, well, as soon as you draw 7 cards, you just win. You know, as soon as you just have this much card advantage on the spot, you just win. You can pay this much life to get this much advantage, you know. And the biggest example was the Van Helsing character, who has E-commit, draw 1 card for each of this card's stun rating, right? So you just play the biggest stun card you can, which granted there's a stun 7 card in standard, and people were like, the first time you draw 7 cards, you're just gonna win. And it turns out that character's strengths and the limitations of the game are built to allow you to draw 7 cards every fucking turn.
Right.
You know? So it is a huge, massive advantage, and you are in the driver's seat, but it is not an unequivocally true statement to say that you can get that much card advantage and just win. You know, just seeing resources and like is just different than like needing to hit your land drops. And so as the game has progressed, there's been like this weird sort of, not gatekeeping, but like this mentality that like as aggro gets pushed, the game gets easier. And I've learned that that's not really true. For one, you have to push different styles, and the other thing that's not true about it is, have we not seen like a wall deck win every single big major championship except for Barrett Bryant winning with Cassie Cage, who, by the way, can wall up just fine when she needs to, right? Like we talk about, you have to play both sides of the game. You know, do you think that defensive decks have always dominated from when you've played?
I mean, I'm biased because I'm a huge wall player. Like, if I can play a game plan that shuts you out of the game and wins over 60 minutes, I'm gonna play it.
Yeah.
But like, if I go back to like when I started playing, which is 2018, it's like Spike 2 won that one, and that was 100% an aggro deck, right?
Oh, true. I did forget about Spike
Yeah,
too. So Tim
yeah,
Keefe.
Spike.
Tim Keefe is
Yeah,
he is
yeah,
the
and Tim
aggro
Keefe,
player.
Tim Keefe is like the like I think the most controlled aggression player. Like if I think of like unabashed like brutal aggression, I don't think of Tim Keefe,
Right.
but
Well, and I
he is
think
like
that real quick, I think that Tim
yeah,
Keefe, it almost feels to me like he went out of his way to prove that aggro can be played in this game. So like I get the
yeah.
impression that he's like, what would I have to do to make an aggro deck win, and then did it.
I think if you asked Tim Keefe, he would just say he wants people to fucking die. You know?
Yeah, he's just tired of sitting there staring at Garrett Brett's massive board.
Yeah, yeah. Tim is very good at playing a controlled game. You know,
Yeah.
like he's not like incapable of playing like a long deadlock thing. He's probably better than most people are out there, but he doesn't like that. He wants people to die, whether it be himself or the opponent. And like he has. You'd have to talk to him. I love talking to Tim Keefe about that shit. But
Mm-hmm. Future guest
it's
for sure, right?
oh, for sure, yeah. If you could talk to Tim Keefe about like his like opinions on like how a game should be played, it's like super unique and interesting and completely wildly vastly different from my own.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like after that, it's like that Worlds was Spike 2. After that, the Nats was the Cassie Cage, so two consecutive aggro decks, right? And then the Worlds after that, Raptor, which I would say is an aggressive. That was an aggressive deck. It's for Breaker 2, yada yada. But I think that's an aggressive deck. After
Mm-hmm.
that, though, like the Mark Tyners and Jacob Johnsons, like they were for sure playing like walls. Zhang was a wall, regardless of the 19 health and the capability of being able to kill you on 2. That's a wall deck.
She's playing on
That's a
your
deck.
turn. She's playing
Yeah,
all
she's
on your
playing.
turn.
Yeah, you have to consider your turn every turn. That's a wall deck. But then we have Gil and of course Cassandra, and then like recently like Kirishima was for sure a wall deck. Even as aggressively as like Kevin played his deck, like that's a deck that walls other decks from like existing. Just because so many decks function on like you not having the right zones, and he just always has the right zones twice a turn.
Yes.
Him existing in that state made it so that he was like, but like recently we see a bunch of aggro decks because there are like very few true walls, right? And the true walls in this game are like kind of deeply flawed in my opinion. It's like
Yes.
Todoroki, who is completely just absurdly flawed. He's so bad fundamentally because he's balanced around being able to cancel and enhance, which is like unheard of, right? There's only other thing that can cancel and enhance, right? And he does it on every turn. And since he does that, he's just like he has to play a throw deck. And because of that, he's so tuned for like turn 7, right? Like you win on turn 5 or 6 most of the time, and so like, and then the only other ones that I can even like think of in this format are just like water decks that can wall. Like Asui, I would qualify as a control deck actually, even though she's super aggressive when she feels like it. But that's a control deck, and that just won too. But yeah, you go ahead, man.
Well,
Sorry.
I was gonna say I think this game rewards variety almost as much as it does redundancy, because the cards are balanced closer together. Like it's just the kind of thing where you could only fit, like in Magic, you can only fit so many 4-drop creatures, so many 3-mana creatures for the most part, and one is like clearly better than the others. And in this game, like 2 4/4s, are actually going to get you as close to, like they're going to deal the same damage more often than like 2 separate 4/4s from Magic would, I would think, right? Like again, depending on speed, you can't really translate, but I think that the card quality is just so much closer together that it allows for stuff like that. On top of that, I would also say that, like, going back to the earlier point where like people were kind of perceiving that the game was getting easier, feeling like it was trying to bring in a more casual fan base, because aggro is where a lot of casual players lie. They don't want to sit there and build for 3 turns, whether they're playing competitive or not. And really, I think what it did was they tuned up aggro to the point where there is more player expression for aggro players. Aggro players can now express themselves and play different strategies rather than just trying to turn to, over a wall, stunning out early, etc., etc.
Yeah, I play with a lot of aggro players. I had Phil here for a week and a half, and that's all he does is he's like the greatest aggro player I've ever seen in my life.
By the way,
Um,
people used to say that a lot, and a lot of people would come out of the woodworks and be like, "Phil plays just fine defense." Like
oh, Phil loves playing control.
yeah,
Actually,
like
yeah,
it's so funny that
yeah,
the perception is that though because he was in Atlanta at the time.
yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, he just for like the one thing is that Phil hates blocking. Like Phil hates fucking blocking regardless of what game it is. So so he wants the game to end quickly. He wants to feel like super powerful. But like oh my gosh, I forget where I was going with my point.
How about
No,
Phil playing?
no, just I see a lot of aggro players, and my like because I'm so far in like my version of an aggro deck is a deck that plays 28 attacks and an equal amount of foundations because like I think of aggro as like an ogre overwhelming you, just like through sheer volume, right? And that's not what aggro is really. Like Phil plays my aggro decks and he's like, what is this fucking garbage, um uh, uh and like because I just look at it as straight numbers, I just see X amount of attacks and X amount of tie frame, and like that's not the right way to do it, and I'm bad at it. This is not my thing. But like one of the actually over the weekend when we talked to Daniel Nelson about the Asui thing, I hate Asui. I've been very open about how much I hate Asui, and so like when I look at the Asui mirror, I'm like, yeah, whoever draws the most gas wins, right? And
Well, you got to
like
check well. You got Brandon Jones found out you have to check well.
Sure. But like that's how I was so assertive with that. Like Jose lost the mirror earlier in the tournament, right? And of course there's confirmation bias on either side of the tail. He was just like, he was like, I checked all my frog whips and tongue or frog lashings, and I just never got to have a turn, and my opponent drew the nuts. Like that happens in any matchup though, right? Like, and Daniel was like, no, I feel like I'm confident in the mirror, and to me, I was like, my brain exploded at that moment. Like that you would feel comfortable in the mirror of a deck that I feel is like just waits around for the right moment,
Well, I think
like,
he said more so than the Tokoyami mirror. I remember
sure.
specifically he did want to dodge the Tokoyami mirror because that one is that's like the Rock'em Sock'em, where they the Bop'em gloves that the kids used to just cuss each other with. You just put like some inflatable tubes on a kid's hands and they just wail on each other.
Yeah. It's like He did qualify to that. So maybe it's because he's like this is a new deck for him. But he had like what I was trying to say is that he had like a totally different, like he had an actual outlook on it. He's like, oh, I think frog kicks are really important for the matchup, and I think that this is X, Y, and Z are good for it. And like that's such a great mindset, as opposed to me just being like a toxic asshole, like, oh, I hate Asui, so I'm gonna play Aizawa at this tournament. Here's Bromley,
Play Ojiro. Ojiro is the real counter.
I do agree with you. I think that Ojiro, like when I've tested it into like Jose, it's like so wildly horrible for Asui because she doesn't want to block any of the attacks. And actually at that second provisional, I was like an inch away from playing Asui. It's just like personally, I don't think the provisionals are like, and I have to go here in a second, but I don't think the provisionals are like super big, baked in, like huge. Like we saw huge numbers, right? But I saw it as like chances to like show archetypes of decks that like we don't typically get to see. And like so for me in that first one, I was like, I want to not play Kirishima. I want to beat Kirishima. So like I built that water deck with the Kamui and the Todoroki in the sideboard. And I was like, Todoroki's bad into like some of the other things like Tokiyami and he's bad at going a second. So I'll just I'll start as Kamui. And then like the second one, I was like, I think Asui is the best one. Jose, you should play that. Or Jose was on that. He's going to play the best water deck he can. And Asui was the one. We tested it. And I was like, well, I want people, like, I think Hardened Pummel is like a real ass card and people should be playing Hardened fucking Pummel. So I'm going to play a Hardened Pummel deck. And so I made the Aizawa deck. And for like 2 weeks before the event, I was like going back and forth with Barrett Bryant, just like trying to make this deck good. Because I think that it's hard. That deck is so hard. And until the day of, I still felt so fucking shitty about it. I went home, I played one game against poor Nilmerg and kicked her ass, and I was like, okay, I'll play this deck, and I'm gonna go bit. And but like same thing here, like this last weekend, I don't know like if I was gonna play. I was so like until Aspira messaged me, he was like, hey, you want to commentate? I was like, thank God, please, because I don't know what I want to play. I don't have anything I want to prove at the moment. I was probably just gonna play Asui, and I would have loved it. I love winning for sure, but like it's just like I had nothing to prove at this moment.
I think the only thing that scared me off Asui from the first provisional was when I played you against your Void Kirishima, and I was like, oh, he can actually just have 7 cards on my turn too and play them all. Like, I think there was a point where you were playing one card or two cards and holding four cards if you didn't have a calling for backup or like a reciprocal extend. And I was like, I can literally throw 7 attacks and I hit with 2 of them. Like, I hit with a tongue smack that did 4 damage, you know?
Right.
And so that one scared me off the first one, and then I haven't had a chance to play in any of the others. And I don't know if I would have played Osweed in this last one because I'm a giant coward and I talked her up all this much, and now I don't know if I could back it up. But on top of that, she doesn't have too many. Like, you draw your hand and you kind of have to commit then and there most of the time. You know, frigid heat waves, tongue smacks if you're running those, like, you know, notwithstanding. Generally, you're kind of committed at that point. Whereas with decks that run cards like Latent Skill or decks like All Might 3, or even All Might 2, you can, like, your turn can vary a lot from when it started. You know, based on, like, what you build from a hardened jab, based on what you draw from your character. So, like, those decks can feel better because they supposedly get you out of worse hands. But Osui is a deck that's going to live until she sees that hand.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I think she's a control combo deck, right? Because she has to see pieces and she's living until then. Yeah. And, like, one of the nice things about it is, like I get yelled at constantly by Phil for, like, blocking with attacks, you know.
That's what you're supposed to do. It feels bad. Well, that's what threw me off at first. Was I was like, I have to hold these lashings. I have to mize my attacks for the perfect.
I just have zero. I had, like, when I played Todoroki, I was, like, siding in tape swings to block with because I wanted more high blocks kind of thing, you know. Mm-hmm. And, like, to me, it's like attacks are gonna be there, right? Like, at some point, I'm gonna get them. Like, it feels bad for sure. I definitely have had situations where, like, this one attack is the only one I can win with, so I have to hold it. Sure. Right.
That was my bad mentality, was thinking I have to hold it because it's what I needed to win, and not realizing that I can still get there eventually.
Right. Yeah. That's my philosophy most of the time. It's like I've had very few situations, especially in my hero. Like, the only time in my hero I felt like I needed to hold an attack where, like maybe a staff strike deck and you drew 2 staff strikes, you don't want to block with those. Yeah. But like I played into the apathetic looping Kirishima, and I was like, my only out is frog lashing, like quadruple frog lashing, because I have 15 face down, so each one of them is going to be for 20. So, like, I held 2 frog lashings for actually 6 turns, but, like, I also held 4 other cards, you know.
Right.
All right. But anyway, I gotta get out of here, unfortunately. But thank you so much for having me on.
In just a few minutes, I understand you're going live over on your own channel, and we're definitely gonna raid over there. We're gonna hop over there, so I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much for joining me. I knew we'd kill an hour super quick, super easy. But the last thing I want, before I give you the last word here, I just want to say that I loved your interviews. I loved the early content, and it's what made me realize that is content that I do want to see, and that is content that I do now want to make, you know, from the previous standpoint at the start of the podcast, where I was like, well, I just want to make funny meme videos. I realized through, you know, those kinds of interviews and those breakdowns that even if they you know, they're 100 views on YouTube, like, they seem small in our community, they're still super vital and they're super important to our community. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for, you know, putting Florida on the map, really, honestly, in a lot of ways. And thank you for joining me here on the Orange Card, Blue Card podcast.
Yeah, man. That's super heartwarming to hear, man. Very, very wholesome. Thank you very much. I love you a lot, man. It was a lot of fun to do the commentary over the weekend with you. It was like time flew for sure.
Yeah, it was absolutely a blast. I'm going to let you go. But speaking of commentary, I do have to give a quick plug. I'm going to transition over here, and I'm sure, Bromley, you can say a quick nice thing about Brian Forrest, because he did such a good job, such an amazing job running the stream.
Yeah, so this is a guy who he's like a Dragon Ball Super player, I guess. He's trying to, like, branch out into our game. He's got a huge, like, support group, and I guess Jasco reached out to him because he's just very knowledgeable where it comes to streaming and all that stuff. And he was just the nicest dude, very, very, like, helpful, extremely like supportive of us. Like, Sam and I throughout the event, he was, like, reminding us to take breaks and stuff. Like, I'd be talking for, like, you know, 8 straight minutes. Sam Tate's like, slow down, take a fucking breath, and this guy's like, no, you're taking a break, call it right now, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, just super cool guy. You should definitely go subscribe to Stage Zero. I watched a couple of his videos. He's just like a very like I don't know anything about Dragon Ball Super, but I was like fingering through them, just trying to get like a feel for him. But like show him some love, leave a comment or something, and maybe he'll start putting up some My Hero content too. It's always nice to get these bigger streamers come in and like put some stuff. I mean, that's how his Spirit came in through here too, right? Like he was originally a Super player. So yeah, give that guy some love. He's awesome and nice and wonderful and fun. So
yeah, big shout outs to Stage Zero. Go check out the content. It looks like he's got Yu-Gi-Oh. It looks like he's got DBS. There's all kinds of videos. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So I'm gonna say goodbye one more time, Chris Bromley. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for streaming every Tuesday on twitch.tv over at Unfunstuff. Is there anything you'd like to say to the chat?
Sign up for our team's event this Saturday. We still need fucking 28 people, man, or else it's gonna be a regular My Hero Academy event, which is fine. But I want to see teams play. We also got the dunk contest, which is included with your main ticket. I'll be, of course, shilling that over on my stream as well. But that was Sam Tate's idea, so I would love to see it fire. I really want to see it fire. Like I know I'm not doing huge amounts of marketing because I was like basically on vacation babysitting Phil Birch for a week and a half. But but yeah, go over to unfunstuff.com and sign up for our event, and also pre-order your Crimson Rampage stuff. I got a bunch. I ordered a huge amount of boxes. I'm gonna sell them. I'm gonna hold on to them for the people that need it, and we're selling at a good price. There's a Twitch Boys capital T is the first it's a coupon, 8% off your first order. Go do that. Have fun. And all right, I gotta go. Love you. See you later.
I'll actually let you go later, man.
All
right, everybody. Thank you guys for joining me for the second ever Orange Card Blue Card podcast. I hope you all had a lot of fun. It has been an amazing weekend. It has been so much fun to cast. Like I said at if you missed the broadcast, I was talking about how I'm a player first, and I've always felt weird about judging or running events because I know that in my heart I'd want to be there playing. I want to play first, but it was actually so much fun, and I would love to do commentary and broadcast again. I did actually used to do a little bit of esports broadcast local here. Las Vegas has like the biggest esports arena, or the first one, stuff like that. We got the big Luxor type stuff. So there's a big esports crowd here, and the broadcasting and stuff has always been very interesting to me and very like integral to the process. And so getting the help from Brian, getting the help from, Aspira, everybody else running it was just super cool and a very valuable experience to me. And I'm going to talk to you guys really quick about the dunk contest just for a minute to give you like an overview if you haven't heard of it. Anyone in the chat, have you guys seen the rules for the dunk contest? Does anyone know what we're talking about? The Universe's dunk contest, I believe it's going to be, all different formats. If you've ever seen the dunk contest from the NBA, right, they set up and they basically just do like one super cool trick dunk. They just do like the most impressive, singular action dunk that they can. And for our game, we're going with like a full turn. So you're going to get to take whatever deck you want, whatever deck list you want, and you're going to have like a minimal amount of manipulation. I'm not going to say the specific numbers. I don't know if those are finalized yet, but you're going to get to put like 5 or 6 cards into play that you need to have in play to do your combo. Sort of like an optimal, like an optimal turn for this deck would look like. But the goal isn't to do the most damage. The goal isn't to kill your opponent. The goal is to do the coolest thing you can, do the most impressive thing you can, do like the most fun to watch thing that you can. And so that could include like a big staff strike combo. That could include something like just exploring the limits of the Casino Bakugo deck, just giving off like what crazy interactions you want to see. In Standard, there is like a huge card pool. There's all kinds of different effects that can be done. There's copying effect. Think of like a Legacy Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh. Think of like what crazy combos you could do with those cards. So I'm really excited for the dunk contest. I hope everything takes off this weekend. It's going to be really cool to watch, and I hope you guys enjoyed. We're gonna go see if Bromley's going live here in just a minute. Maybe we can get the raid, just bring all the people over. But if not, go ahead, check out Unfunstuff at twitchtv.com. They're going live in just a minute. They got all kinds of really cool guests. Thank you guys again for checking it out. I'll see you next week, but it won't be on Tuesday. I will most likely be changing the date just because I don't want to conflict with Christopher Bromley. And I'm excited. We're going to have a new local meetup here on Tuesdays here in Vegas. So Tuesdays won't be the home of Orange Card, Blue Card, but if you're here, if you've got the notifications, if you're following, you'll know exactly when I go live next. Thank you again for joining me. I'll see you guys next time.